below the last large rapid at Puerto Ayacucho, where the Orinoco leaves the Colombian and Venezuelan border and heads northeast towards the Atlantic coast, the land levels out and creates the vast Orinoco Llanos. Before the river gets to the gigantic delta, there are some small rivers that enter the Orinoco from the north. There are some endemic fishes here and some very beautiful habitats. This video will show you one of the most common pike cichlids, the Crenicichla lugubris type from the Orinoco in breeding color, so it's worth watching till the end. This habitat is the headwaters of a river, locally called Morichal, where the moriche palms grow with their roots in the water. Depending on the time of the year, the water is very clear in this region. The center of the river is fast moving, with Sagittaria growing in the middle. As you can get closer to the margins, the river slows, and there are dense clusters of aquatic plants and water lilies. It's actually surprising how few fish are in the open water here, but there are also plenty of predators such as pike cichlids, piranhas, herons, and kingfishers. Along the edges there are plenty of Bryconops and large schools of Astyanax, tetras, but not exactly small species. To see the smaller fish, we must get deep into the margins where the plants are really dense. The edges of the vegetation are also the margins of the territory for male Apistogramma guttata. They are actually surprisingly aggressive, and the males spend most of their time in and out of the plants looking for food and chasing any other Apistogramma, including some juveniles, out of their territory. Unfortunately, I could not get a video of the males displaying to each other, nor a female with babies. You can see that the substrate in the center of the river is clean sand. Here, the current is strong enough that fine particles don't get deposited. The moment the current slows, fines start to settle on the sand and also on the dense plants. It is kind of ideal for the Apistogramma and creates an endless maze for them to breed in. Don't be fooled into thinking that this is the only type of habitat that Apistogramma thrive in. For example, Apistogramma alacrina is found on the edges of rapids in Colombia's Macarena region, or Apistogramma diplotania and Apistogramma samophila that basically live on the beaches of large rivers. With 90 described species and lots of undescribed ones, of course there is a lot of diverse set of habitats. Where there are some small clearings in the dense plants is where you find small tetras. Here some Copella and Moenkhausia copei, but there are also some Hephaesobrychon and Pristella. And you could also see Posilia and even Rivulus here. The displacement of water from my body likely sends these small fish into hiding, or in case of the killifish, they are in water that is just 1 centimeter deep, where you would not find them easily. Where the water gets deeper, the fish get bigger. The middle-sized characins like Astyanax and Cyphocharax are here, along with huge numbers of Cychlasoma. These are very beautiful in sunlight, and you can see from far away that some of them are in breeding condition. Their vertical stripe then changes over to a single round black spot with very bright yellow spots to either side. They will lay eggs on a leaf, stick, or any solid surface, and once the larvae hatch, the female will make a series of little pits to keep the babies in. When one of the potential predators pass by, the fry will duck down into the pits, while the parents chase it away. As you would expect with many cichlids, the male took off when I approached and left the wife to deal with the issue of a 2-meter-long predator filming their prey. The female remains over the dense cluster of babies and will even attack the dome port of the camera. The male remains a bit further away and returns only once I back away from the nest. Along the margin of the river, several females with eggs, young, or free-swimming fry at different stages of development nest some 2 or 3 meters apart. The young remain with the parents until they reach around 1 centimeter or ½ inch in length and then disperse into the dense plants. With increased size, they venture more and more into the open water and eventually join the large school of adults on the edge of the thicket of plants. A bit further away there's a huge bend in the river, and on the slow-moving outside of the curve, water lilies cover the surface. This is where we find Corydoras, but also some Pristella, Hephaesobrychon, and tons of tadpoles. They move around in the space under the water lilies where there are tons of hiding spaces, and the edge of the open channel, where lots of potential food is rolling along the bottom over the fine sand. If you get too close, the school quickly disappears under the water lilies and then takes 10 to 12 minutes to emerge again and swim on the open sand. Corydoras, while widespread in South America, are not always easy to spot underwater. Most species are well camouflaged and they are surprisingly shy. Much of my footage of the world's favorite aquarium catfish is of them swimming away. This rather long flight distance is surprising, given that many other small fish species can be approached more easily. At the edge of the fast water flow, but under the safety of the water lilies, is also the preferred space of some cichlids. Mesonauta egregius really like feeding on the underside of the leaves, and they are really well camouflaged in this contrasted light and all the stems of the water lilies. Mesonauta of all species are fish that prefer a roof over their head, and are almost always seen in habitats where plants, floating plants, or fallen trees provide shelter over their heads. Exposed to the open water, these slow cichlids have little defense against faster predators. There are also Satanoperca here, and their activity attracts lots of tetras and even the Corydoras that hope the digging will uncover potential food for them. This shallow area is usually occupied by juvenile fish. The adults prefer deeper water, but out in the open they are also much more difficult to approach. These young fish of 5 to 10 centimeters or 2 to 4 inch size are much less shy and allow the camera quite close before fleeing to the safety of the plants. The center of the river is not really deep, maybe up to my hip, but the flow is really high. There are small tetras here and also some larger fish like piranhas and some Bryconops. The old analog camera could actually not focus well in this kind of situation with the strong current and all the plants moving, but then there was movement in the Sagittaria. There's a pair of huge Crenicichla lugubris under the plants. In the broken light, they are really hard to notice, but because they're not immediately swimming away is a good sign. Here we are. Some body length downstream I find this cluster of tiny fry. Their behavior is typical for pike cichlids, and the parents won't stay far for long at this size, because even a tetra could eat these little ones. The thing I find so fascinating about the pike cichlids is that there's perhaps no fish that keeps guarding their young for so long. These big Crenicichla all do that. In a year from now, these babies may be 15 centimeters or 6 inches long and still hang out with mom until she decides to lay a new clutch of eggs. It did not take long and you could see the shadow over the young. The parents are back to pick them up after establishing I'm not an immediate threat to them. While the male keeps a bit more distance, you can see the pair using their fins to signal the fry to tag along. I always refer to this species as the gray sausage because until they are in this breeding color, they are the ugliest of the large Crenicichla species. But I have to admit that the red eyes and bright cheeks make them look pretty nice now. Note the bite marks of piranhas on the tails of the parents. Too bad I could not get that on film here. Crenicichla lugubris is the most widespread species, and likely all these different forms of it belong to several different species. Our gray sausage, however, looks totally identical here when compared to fish caught in the upper Orinoco, some 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles south of this location. Despite the fact that these are widespread and frequently exported pike cichlids, they have not been bred in captivity often. The large Crenicichla are difficult to breed in the aquarium, need a well-balanced diet with infrequent feeding, tons of water changes, and a good portion of luck to get them to lay eggs. The key thing here is to make sure the fish are not overfed, because these fish eat anything offered, means that they can easily get too fat, which then shortens their lifespans. Ideally, the large adult Crenicichla are fed heavily, but only one time per week to allow them to keep the slender shape. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will continue to use some of this footage that has been filmed more than 15 years ago, instead of letting it sit in a shoebox in my office. Now that travel is possible again, we will make some videos in higher resolution and hopefully with a VR camera in the coming months. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and share the video where you can. We also have separate videos with other Crenicichla species, as well as a guide to Geophagus and a video showing another 30 Orinoco fish species. You can find links to all in the description for this video. We are slowly closing in on 10,000 subscribers, and I promise we will do some special videos when the time comes.